Well, we're racing ahead in our timetable here, which is no bad thing on a sunny evening. You can all go out and indulge in some vertical drinking shortly. Moving on to arts and culture, really, in this part. And I know from the discussion we had just now that a lot of you are from the arts and creative industries, so I hope you'll have an awful lot to say. I, for one, think that having drafted the Westminster Arts and Culture Strategy, that it is a very important part of the life of this city and something that needs as much encouragement and protection as we can possibly give it. It's always a matter of great sadness that we have that empty building on the corner of Russell Street and Wellington Street, as used to be the Theatre Museum. And I really do hope that with the museums, galleries and theatres that we have, we're able to protect and encourage them and to help them flourish over the coming years. But we have some specific questions here. A lot of them are about music venues. I'm happy to widen the discussion beyond music venues to arts and culture venues generally. But I'm going to hand back over to Lisa now to guide us through it.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, as the councillor said, any other arts and cultural uses you may wish to raise and points against them, please feel free to. These are just a few things that we've picked up. The first question relates to, we want to continue to protect and support arts and cultural uses, and should we have a stronger policy to protect music venues? And I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Tom just to talk about what we mean by music venues.
Well, I think we're not talking about nightclubs here. We're more talking about live music venues where music is played. We've certainly noticed in Westminster there has been the loss of some live music venues in the past, and it's something that has been highlighted to us in some research that we've done. And I think in particular in Westminster, we feel it can often add to the vibrant mix of Westminster, and it's often seen as a national or even internationally important use in Westminster. Some of them are quite famous uses. So it covers a broad spectrum of music venues, but in particular live music venues, and as I said, a range of venues from internationally and nationally important ones to more local venues.
I know we lost the Astoria Theatre through the rebuilding of Crossrail, which was a live music venue, by way of example.
I was going to say as well, in terms of the broader policy approach, in the core strategy that's due to come out really at the start of September and made publicly available sometime in August, there's an overarching policy in there about national and international uses and protecting the uses themselves and the buildings within which they're contained. And as Tom noted, many music venues would fall within that definition of a national or international music venue, so that may just add a little to your thoughts on protection of music venues, or indeed any other arts and cultural uses you wanted to raise.
And I think it's a challenging one. The Theatre Museum actually is a point in hand. I noted on my way here today it's actually being used as a Banksy exhibition hall at the moment, but that has laid empty for some time because our policy is it should be a museum, that premises should house a museum, and there may not be the museum that is able to take that space. Same with some theatres and the like. So from your own arts and cultural background, you may want to think whether we're over-protectionist, not protectionist enough. Again, I leave it open to all of you to give me some comment. No one?
Well, just one thought. I'm sorry that the gentleman Simon Quayle from Shaftesbury is gone, because they have been quite innovative sometimes when they've had premises which have been empty, and they've let them for sort of temporary gallery uses, temporary showroom uses. If Simon was here, he could say whether there was any rent involved or whether it was sort of a nil rent. I don't know what happened about business rates and so on, but that seems to me to be a very good way, particularly for people who are starting out in the arts, to be able to showcase whatever it is they're doing in premises which are temporarily vacant. And so, and also from the point of view of the area as a whole, it gives it a buzz. And I don't think it should necessarily detract from the ability to let the premises in the long term. So I see those temporary sort of arts and cultural uses as being really quite good. And there are quite a lot of, sadly, there are quite a lot of vacant units around now, and they could be used in that way.
Right, around Seven Dials, Shaftesbury have been doing an awful lot of that, and it's been very welcome. The local community have done it over years. The lady in the front,
Roger.
and then gentleman from Mr. Differ.
Mary Alice Stack from Westminster Arts. I strongly support what the gentleman's just said about alternative uses of empty spaces. And just to add on the comment about the Theatre Museum, I think that the council needs to be aware of the changing face of culture and the fact that traditional museums may not be the most appropriate or current expression of culture, and that perhaps being more flexible in what we might consider to be within the broad scope of what museums used to do, and perhaps attract or invite proposals from organisations that may have a more innovative approach to the use of the space, which brings in some of the aspects of the educational aspects that a museum might offer, but also could function in a variety of ways. Certainly the space at that site is large enough to support multi-use, and I think if people were invited to create proposals, the one wonderful thing about the cultural sector is our infinite capacity to come up with brilliant uses and challenge people's perceptions of norm. And I think the fact that the Theatre Museum failed as an institution on that site perhaps gives us clues as to how we need to address future uses. There's no point simply recreating the museum as it stood. It needs to be reinvigorated, reinvented, represented to reflect the world that we live in now. So I think whenever there are issues around vacant properties which commercial landlords perhaps are unable to secure tenants effectively, inviting the cultural sector in on a temporary basis, perhaps for free, if that's what's needed to get the site reactivated and attracting attention, that should be encouraged wherever possible. And I agree, I don't think it needs necessarily to be at the detriment excuse me, of the site's potential to attract a commercial tenant. I think sometimes, in fact, there's many examples of artists regenerating an area simply by being there. It suddenly raises people's expectations about it as a destination venue. There's a buzz about it. It becomes very exciting. And there are many parts in Westminster, I live in one of them, where actually there's very, very little going on. They're quite desolate in terms of not just venues, but shops and so on. And I think the council could look at its territory in a much more interesting way.
Okay, but I'm going to go to Valentine in a minute, but I think there's a very interesting point there. And Kevin from the Cultural Quarter and the lady from the Albert Hall, I know Tony Elliott started the Exhibition Road Cultural Quarter, and I worked with Sandy and with Ruth Jarrett on the central squares, or whatever they were going to call it, the cultural quarter that you're with. And what these cultural quarters were all about was trying to actually say to organisations that were in close proximity to each other, let's work together, let's develop a sense of purpose or being of our area to show the artistic integrity of what goes on here, and that actually culture is very important to this particular part of the city. And my question is really, I'm throwing it back to you two in particular here. Do we as a city council, through our planning policies, through our other policies, make it easy enough for you to do that, or do we put obstacles in your way?